So in this session, we are going to be talking about working in partnership for the public. So I think some of the issues we will cover is how do you actually work across departments, across organizations, across sectors, across professions, across territories and regions. So all of those issues I think we're going to cover to make sure that you put users ultimately who are going to be using your public services at the heart of everything that you do. We've got another fantastic panel with us here today. I'm going to follow the same format as we've been following the rest of the day. So I'll invite each of our speakers to give some short opening remarks. And then as it has been for the rest of the day, it's very much your session. So please be thinking of the questions that you want to put to the panel, and we'll get through as many of those as we can before the end of the session. So we're going to hear from Paul Wagner, who is Chief Information Officer at the Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat. Then we will hear from Dorothy Eng, who is the Executive Director at Code for Canada. And then Michael Combe, who is Partner of Government and Public Sector at EY. And then Noreen Heckman-Suk, who is the Senior Advisor to the Federal CIO, so straight from the White House. And then we have Isabelle Tonguet, who is Chief Information Officer and Director General, Information Management and Technology Directorate at the Department of Finance here in Canada. So another fantastic panel. And Paul, I'm going to invite you to kick off with your opening comments.
I thought you were starting down there. That's why I sat here. So two things. One, before anybody writes the press release, I'm the Deputy CIO for the Government of Canada. Catherine Lilo is still the CIO.
Sorry, but I just gave you a big
No, that's all right. That's fine. And two, I want the guy who did the Tanium commercial on his voice for my voiceover. That'd be fantastic. Listen, thank you everybody for joining us today. A couple of points, I guess, from a federal perspective. How many people here think the federal government is a well-oiled machine when it comes to coming to innovation, doing new things, working across departments? Show of hands. One hand. Just one. Oh, there we go. Thank you. One hand. Yeah. Therein lies the problem. We need to find a way to actually work across government. If you think about the federal government, 160 plus organizations, very siloed operations. I was listening to the previous panel, and they got it absolutely correctly. I mean, everybody kind of head down, get the thing done. And, as an example, if you look at the numbers of ways you could sign into a digital government service today, it's somewhere north of 60. And the problem with that is the intermediary of all of this patchwork of different service experience is the client, the Canadian business, or those looking to come to the country. And we need to do better than that. Now, it's up to everybody in this room. It's up to the leadership to actually design what better and what right looks like. And so, hopefully over the next, a couple of, or an hour or so here, we can talk about what that looks like. I think some great examples of collaboration, both within the federal public service, but even beyond. I have the privilege of chairing a committee that spans all of the provinces and territories and some municipalities. And the CIOs and the service delivery chairs get together. We get together on a monthly basis to talk about ways that we can accelerate digital service delivery across the country. And I will say some of the most effective service delivery accelerators are in the small jurisdictions, and I'm sure we'll get into that here around the table. So really looking forward to your comments, your questions, challenge us up here. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dorothy.
Sure. Thanks so much. Sorry, Dorothy, let's go straight over to you. But I was just going to say, I think you've picked up some nice issues there that please be thinking about your questions on those. So we can do so much better, and it's up to all of us in the room together. So it's not necessarily looking to the panel here for the answers. It's do you have some thoughts on the answers as well? We're all in this together, I think.
That includes the people I can't see over here because of the podium, but you're still...
Who are hiding behind the podium.
You're on notice.
Thanks. Dorothy.
Thank you. So I represent a different sector altogether. So I'm going to take us out of the federal government and the public sector and take you over to the nonprofit sector, which is where Code for Canada comes from. We are a national nonprofit. We work in the public interest. Our mission is to leverage technology and design and make sure that it's inclusive, it's accessible, and we do that primarily by partnering with governments to help build their digital capacity. Some friends, I think, in panelists and other speakers like Noreen and Claire this morning from the U.S. government are quite familiar with this kind of model, which is civic technology. Code for America is our sister organization in the U.S., and they've been doing a lot of great work for over 10 years, similar to us. And really what I hope, I can illustrate today is really the pool of talent out there within our tech sector, which are, senior, also junior, but lots of senior digital professionals who come from the private sector who haven't really thought of the public sector as a place to contribute their skills, to take, to move their careers in that direction. And what Code for Canada does is we attract that talent to bring them in-house and work within governments, pairing them shoulder to shoulder to kind of coach them in new ways of working, digital principles and techniques like user-centered design and, user research and testing and working in iterative ways like Agile, and really modeling the behaviors that they want to see their public service counterparts adopt and build their confidence in. And some of our success stories revolve around a number of successful projects where we've embedded teams of collaborators. These are groups of product managers, UX designers, web developers. Often these are roles that are not often recruited into government. Even, there's some titles like product managers that really don't even exist in a lot of government contexts, however, are quite common in the private sector. And these people have helped to do everything from modernize, benefits delivery, to do user testing with actual recipients of benefits, all the way to helping to modernize and improve the experience for military members who are transitioning out into civilian life. And a lot of our collaborators, one of the ultimate success metrics that we look at with this kind of digital capacity building work is at the end of the project, have we managed to make a fit between the team that we've embedded into government and the government partner? And often after, 10 months, 12 months, all the way up to 3 years, these are how long some of our engagements are, we do manage to make that fit. And it's so remarkable and just amazing to see our government partners, finally find a home to they do all that heavy lifting to make that business case for, yes, we actually need a product manager on our team. And we're going to define that business case and we're going to sell it up the chain and get that approval. Or we've never had a developer sitting shoulder to shoulder with our policy people. But having this developer with us is extremely valuable because look at all the things we can build together. And we have so many success stories like that where that digital talent has found a home. And that's what we look at as kind of long-term capacity building and digital transformation of government. It's creating that long-term sustainable tech talent pipeline into government so that people want to stick around forever. Oh.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dorothy. So I see you're reaching right out across society to wherever the talent is and creating these kind of pathways in so that talent can be used to help ultimately create these great public services. So you're really facilitating and creating bridges for people to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And I'm sure there'll be questions about exactly how you do that, both maybe in America and in Canada as well. Mike, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here. My name is Mike, and I lead our public sector business for the Government of Ontario here in Canada at EY. So I was thinking about this session, what are you trying to get out of it, this session? And I think, why would you come to a session like this? And I think, probably most of the people in this room are interested in solving big, complex, hairy problems that have some role, where government has some role to play in helping to solve those problems. So what are these big, complex, hairy problems? We could go through a long list of them, from everything from health-related issues to the environment, to poverty, to housing, and the list would go on and on and on. Well, what is the sort of feature of these big, hairy problems that I think most of us here probably work on? And I think the main feature is they're complex systems. They exist within complex systems. So what is a complex system? A complex system is a system with many, many components, and where the relationships between those components are nonlinear. So there's a very complex set of relationships between those components. So who has the information? And this is where I'm going to get back to working across and beyond government. Who has the information about these complex systems, about these components and relationships within complex systems? Well, it's everyone, right? It's all of you. It's people who work in governments, people who work outside of government. It's the not-for-profit sector, it's community, and most importantly, it's people, right? It's citizens. So we got to bring it back to that level to understand what's going on in these complex systems. And I promised myself I wasn't going to talk about AI, but collective intelligence and AI go together, and it's really important because what AI now allows us to do is, using natural language, ask questions about these complex systems, and the AI can actually talk back to us in a language that we understand, because most of us don't speak in numbers. If you ever try to talk to a spreadsheet, you probably have struggled a bit with that. So that's where I think collective intelligence, artificial intelligence is going to be quite important. And if we picked any of the sort of big complex problems, let's say housing, for example, if we want to make sure that Canadians have access to housing that they can afford, we're going to need to apply real complex problem solving. We're going to need to do it across government, outside of government. We're going to need to bring that information together. We're going to need to process and consume that information and come up with solutions that are much less siloed than the solutions we've come up with in the past. So looking forward to exploring that concept today. And thank you.
Thanks, Mike. And I mean, you've put that really well, that actually traditionally we've tried to use departmental silos to solve problems that don't fit within a departmental kind of boundary. So most of the issues facing people, as you say, are so complex. They cut across all of these policy areas and they relate to their communities, their relationships, all of those things. So we definitely needed this different way of approaching those problems. Thanks, Mike. Noreen, over to you.
Good afternoon. So I'm Noreen Heckmanzik. I do not want to present here death by PowerPoint, but I thought I would, if this clicker works, just give you an overview of who I am, what I've done across my career, and what we're trying to do at the Office of the Federal CIO. So you saw this slide this morning. This should be true in the year 2023, when the pandemic really forced us all forward. This should be something we should all be able to do. Everyone in this room knows why this is very hard, right? And that's why we're here today. So that number, $115 billion, to me, as someone who grew up in a very small town in northeastern Pennsylvania, I came to serve our country. My father sent me a cartoon where about a few months after I moved to Washington, and it was a cartoon of a guy driving in a car, and it said, the real world this way, Washington this way, right? And I still have that cartoon. So to me, and I think this is why you all serve because you care about your friends, your relatives, your communities. You care about the missions that you're focusing on. And we all have very big dollar figures like that, and we should all want to deliver impact with those taxpayer dollars. The other thing I will say about this slide is we have a lot of federal employees in the United States who are just like you, right? They came because they care about their communities, and we make it really hard for them to do their jobs. Right? They have the passion, they want to serve, and we give them paper. We give them fat finger errors. They can't even get to the mission because they have files that are on carts, floors that are collapsing in government buildings. And we need to do better, and we need to be able to inspire the next generation to join us, because I'm coming to the end of my federal journey. And so I've kind of just telling you exactly what I think. We need to move faster. I want my children to be inspired to serve. They don't have to serve as long as I've served, but I want them to serve our country. For me, it's about inspiring the patriotic pipeline. That's my new term, Siobhan. It's patriotic pipeline. You all need a patriotic pipeline to come and serve your country, leave your government better than you found it. So in a snapshot, these are the amazing missions that I've served over the course of my career. We know people want to work on these missions. I've done it. It's so inspiring. And Dorothy, to your point, the United States Digital Service, Dorothy just said right before we came up, I said, I'm aware of Code for America. She said, I was at Code for America. And I said, well, you heard Claire's one answer speech. And yes, you did. And she wore a t-shirt. It was fun. It said one answer. The American people deserve one answer when they interact with our government. They don't deserve 252 million answers on Google for how to apply for Medicare. period, exclamation point, right? They don't deserve that. So this is what, we are trying to do. And so this is another high level. These are all the things I've worked on in my government career. It was really a therapy exercise for me one day. Like, let me just put it in a Venn diagram. So amazing missions, right? That people count on. And I'm a communicator. I'm a bureaucracy hacker. I'm someone who I can see the big picture, and I can try to connect the dots to help senior leaders across government, political appointees, connect the dots so they can drive change. Why do we need to do this? Not just for the people, not for the workforce, also our stakeholders. When we talk about serving the public, the members of the public for us in the United States are constituents of members of Congress. And if we can't tell the story about how someone in Des Moines, Iowa, or someone in Orlando, Florida, or someone in San Francisco, California, is getting better government services from us through technology, we have failed, right? So we need to tell those stories so that Congress says, oh, wow, that product or service you've delivered, I'm getting fewer calls to my office because they know how to sign up for Medicare. They know how to check on their child's student loan. I have veterans, they know how they can get a prescription now without having to wait in a huge queue. And so that's called building trust with our government. And when we build trust, we will get more money, more investment, and more people to come and join us. And we will engage our current workforce. We want you engaged. We want you, when you leave here today, say, I'm going back to my office and I'm going to deliver for the Canadian people, right? We want you to be inspired by this work. So there we are. That's what we believe. We will deliver because there's no choice and it's up to us. No one else is coming. And that's what I would say to all of you, right? You have to be inspiring your friends and neighbors in your neighborhoods to come and do a tour of duty I feel like I'm speaking on behalf of your Prime Minister, and I'm not authorized to do that. I will just tell you that. But I think I think the Prime Minister might support that statement. Would he support it? I have no idea. We'll find out. So thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Noreen. I think it's really interesting that when we have people like yourself on the panel who have been in public service for so long and you've worked across different areas, one, you can see the great things that are being done, but you can also see where the joins aren't quite meeting each other and where more connections need to take place. So really interesting to see all the areas you've worked in. And I will definitely take your patriotic pipeline catchphrase and use that for myself going forward. Thank you so much, Noreen. Isabelle, over to you.
Thank you. So I'm Isabelle Tanguay, actually the Chief Information Officer at Finance Canada. So it's a pleasure to be here today. Let me just introduce myself so you get to know me a little better. So I've been working in the federal government since 28 years already, always work in the IT field. I did work in various functions. I performed various functions of IT, but I did specialize at some point in IT security mostly. I also worked in 9 different department agencies. And the reason why I did put that picture on the screen is because I wanted to share that with you today. It just means a lot to me because it's at the beginning of that journey 28 years ago. Well, actually, I was working at the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and I was serving as an agent of the service desk. And I'm looking at the picture and I do realize lots of things has changed since then. Like the beige computer were kind of a commonplace at that time. The phone system you see in the background was probably like the high-tech thing. That has changed a lot. But I do remember one thing that haven't changed, though. It's probably my purpose. What was making me feel very accomplished at the end of the day was to make a difference. So my goal was actually to resolve technical issues for members, was to improve the internal process within the service desk to make things more efficient. And the only thing that has changed over the 28 years is just that I learned through these years that how is it that we can make things better? How can we make a difference? It's really by using collaboration. So for me, it's the best, powerful competencies that we can probably have to change things. So what I would like to focus on today maybe is more like the two questions. So it's basically, what is this force of collaboration? How can we collaborate wisely? So the two questions that I do have in mind when that happens is, why do we need to collaborate and how do we collaborate? So what I'm thinking is that it's very important that we all face challenges, and we are actually, if you're currently thinking just to your respective team right now, I'm sure that you're facing challenges, problem, where actually you have like an impasse. You're just trying to resolve the issue, but you cannot fix it fast enough. You need a solution. You actually communicate as much as you want with the people in your team, but you just can't deliver fast enough. It could be because of various reasons. For example, you do not have enough resource. Could be financial resource, human resource. You can face some knowledge within the team that are missing, but you're really facing a problem, a need. And this is exactly when collaboration kicks in. And the second question, how do we collaborate? The best and easy way to collaborate, from my perspective, is to reach out to your network. And how do you build, how do you nurture this network? This is something very important that we need to take in consideration. And this network needs to grow with time. And you have to make sure you have contact with the right people. And sometimes can go over and beyond to the private sector. You need to find solution for your team. You need to reach out. You need to speak about the problem you're facing. And when you reach out to your network, then what you're seeking really is to gain some ideas, insight, comments, and sometimes even solution that they tried that failed or solution that worked. This is how you can go to deciding, do we want to reuse something that exists already? Do you want to leverage something? Do we want to modernize, innovate together? And then you can create strategic alliance and you can have like partnership. So this is, from my perspective, how us ordinary people can make and achieve extraordinary very good things.
Isabelle, thank you so much. I love the fact that you said your purpose hasn't changed from when you joined. So it's always been about making a difference, making things better. And that's been a kind of constant throughout your career. And then I think that thing that you said there, when you're faced with a problem, quite often I think teams and organizations can go inwards. They can focus too much inwards. And you're saying that's the moment when actually you need to look outside and create those networks and collaborate with others. Thank you so much to all of you for your fantastic opening remarks. I do have a few questions myself, but I'm going to see first. Let's go to the audience, because I know we always run short of time. We've got some microphones in the room. Do we have a first question or two? A gentleman going to the microphone? No? Yes? No. We've got a lady here going to the microphone. Yep, and a gentleman there. So, gentleman at the back, you got there first. We'll take yours, and then the lady at the front. We'll take both the questions together, okay? And then you can answer one or both. Gentleman at the back.
So I'm wondering how open Canada is to taking a policy like Estonia's Tell Us Once for citizen data and implementing it.
Thank you. So that would be for the Canadian colleagues. But if others have a thought on the Tell Us Once, so using citizens' data and then sharing that across government so that they only have to ask once. Yeah, and the lady here.
So my question is also about citizen data. When we're working in the government in a private-public partnership, it's a difficult dance with regard to data security and acceptable uses of data. It's really important that people trust you enough to give you their data in the context of a public service for it to work properly. This question is inspired by my disappointment in finding out in another session here today that Canada Post sells client data to third parties, which is not what most people expect of government data stewardship. So I'm curious to know, what are your thoughts on creating a shared set of standards for the use of digital data in both public and private sectors that is closer to the user-centric data protection policies of the European Union?
Thanks so much. I think both those questions link very nicely. So we also have Tell Us Once in the UK. I think it's slightly different from Estonia. But so to what extent are issues around sharing data, so data sharing, to what extent are they opportunities, but also potential risks when it comes to joining up across government departments? And in particular, the second question there around privacy and security of people's data. So if they give it to one department, are they expecting it to be shared in that way? Paul, you're nodding. Can I come to you first? Your thoughts on those two questions? Because I think they link. We'll take them both together.
Sitting at the end here. This is so great questions, both of them, and they do tie together. And maybe I'll turn them around just on the Tell Us Once. You know, we've done some great work at marketing that idea, and we are very good at doing that, coming up with the idea, putting it out there, have some arm waving around it, and then it doesn't get done, right? So the idea of Tell Us Once, I think UK has done some great work. Estonia has done some fantastic work, as well as other jurisdictions. We don't have to look across the pond. You can look to some of the provinces that we all live in, whether it's BC, Alberta, Quebec, Newfoundland. There's some great Tell Us Once activities. There's some great joining of services in a way that Canadians expect services to be joined. You shouldn't have to care which department or which ministry is delivering the service that's standing next to the service that you're looking to get. And so I think from a data perspective, and we now have a chief data officer, Stephen Bird. I think he's in the room somewhere. He's at the back. He'll be signing autographs as you walk out. This to me is when things start to get serious in the federal government, when we actually spend the time, we have a leadership position at a significant level to start to look at some of these challenges. Because if you think of the programs and the way departments have been set up historically, they're very silent. I mean, you went to the Department of Motor Vehicles, and that's all you did there. I know the story. Some of you have heard me speak before. You've heard my story about buying a boat. My apologies, but you know, like when you bought a boat, you had to get the registration transferred from the previous owner. And I won't bore you with the details, but you know, you think about which departments to go to. DFO, no. Transport Canada, no. So eventually, you figure out at the time it was CBSA. Why? Because you can sail across the border. Not obvious, but you had to go to the CBSA office. Buddy opened up a filing cabinet, found the registration paper from 1973 when the boat was like, really? So that type of experience has to change, but you need to have the policy and the data discussions not across all of government. Again, too often we try to boil the ocean. Let's have a common data standard for the federal government. The complexity, I mean, we're talking about complex systems, the complexity of getting to a place that you can actually achieve that, the lowest common denominator will win, and Canadians will be unimpressed. And if I think about the executive order that our colleagues in the United States, that your president put out in terms of safe, seamless service experience, we'll never get there. So it's taking a small enough cluster of departments or services, in fact, regardless of the departments or organizations that they're in, and coming up with what's a data model that makes sense for the user, for the Canadian business, or for the individual looking to come to the country. So I just think, you know, Isabel's point around your network, when you walk into a room, think about, you know, who you can bring with you to actually solve not just your problem, but the problems that are adjacent to it.
Thanks, Paul. Noreen, so yeah, the kind of seamless ambition does require a lot of joining up behind the scenes of data. So similarly, are you having challenges around how easily are people being able to share data, but all these big barriers that might be, and potential risks, especially with the trust, I think, citizens trusting how their data is being used. Is that something that you've had lots of conversations about?
Yes, and I think stemming from the president's executive order on customer experience, one of the first things that came out of that executive order was taking a look at the life experiences that our citizens have across government. So if you think of a natural disaster or a tornado, in the United States, you know, the American people might have to reach out. They don't even know who they have to reach. You know, their paper has been, if it's Florida and it's a hurricane, they don't have their records. They don't have their paper. They might have to touch upon 5, 6, 7 different agencies to get help and get back up and running again. So one of the things, and I am not a chief data officer, but what I can tell you is we believe in securing that data and making sure that the American people's data is used in a trustworthy manner. And we want to get to the point where what we are trying to do is get to the point where we are unlocking that data so it can transit across those 7 or 8 agencies. The American people don't need to know the names, they just want their life back. They just want to get help from their government. And my colleagues are working extremely hard. And it's also about incremental progress and communicating the progress. And once we start doing that, we will build the trust, get support from the stakeholders, and get to the next point on the journey.
Isabel, did you want to add anything on the data questions?
Maybe just the fact that the trust of the citizen is the most important thing. If we're not a business of making money, it's a government business. So basically, keeping the trust of the citizen is the most important thing that we need to keep in mind. So definitely, another thing we need to do better is how to exchange this information within the government, right? Between our departments. So before even thinking of sharing that with others, I guess we got to get better internally with our own business.
Yeah, I once asked, we had a webinar I was doing on data sharing, and I asked why people were so quick to give their data to private sector companies and not to government. They worry about it. And basically because they get such a great service from private sector. And if we were to do the same, then maybe that they would give their data more freely. So I think there is a catch-22 there. I'm going to ask Dorothy and then Mike their thoughts on this question. But if you have other questions, please make your way to the mics. And I'm going to take 2 more questions after this. So Dorothy.
Yeah, I was just going to add, maybe bringing it back to, the resident's perspective or the user's perspective. If I think of a general person of the population, I always like to think of my mom. And when she thinks of government, she doesn't know, I heard about like different departments, is it this department or that department that I go to for the service? But if you even step out of the department of, let's say, the federal government, because this is where a lot of our audience is from today, even different levels of government, from municipal to provincial to federal, it's all the same thing to a lot of people. And so when we think about things like, the resident experience, what is the journey, not just with one service, but even just being a member of a community, it's very complex because it challenges that idea of data governance and data sharing even further between different jurisdictions. And I think it is very much related to trust, right? Because I think if we assume that a person is already trusting of government, that's already, I think, even going a bit further than where a lot of communities are starting, right? There's a lot of marginalized, underrepresented communities that where their trust of government has eroded over time. And so that's another thing also to keep in mind. And the final thing I was going to say, to bring it back to the private sector, is that there's obviously a risk with all of this, that the longer governments wait to kind of figure it out to provide a user-centric service, the private sector will step in, which is exactly what has happened with Google Maps and transit data. That was a pilot that started between Google and I believe it was the city of Portland, and where Portland needed some ability to provide access to their transit data to riders, and so worked in partnership with Google. And because that infrastructure was set up, it then just scaled because it was so seamless. Yeah. So I think the longer we kind of wait and assume, let's wait till the governance is set up and the sharing agreements are set up, there will be other industries or groups at play that will end up becoming the service that people will go to, that people end up trusting more.
Thanks, Dorothy. Mike, we've got 2 questions waiting, but did you want to add anything on
I think it's well covered, but just to add, I think it is interesting that we hold government to such a high standard when it comes to data and privacy, yet we will freely give up all of our information about all our every aspect of our life to our people who produce apps for your phone, right? Or Facebook and so on. So I think it is inevitable that there will need to be sharing of data between public and private sector entities. That's going to create benefit for us into the future, and we're going to need to figure out how to do that. Government should be held to a high standard, but government also has an important role to play in holding our private sector collaborators to the same high standards, and I think we're somewhat failing on that front. So I think that would be the message I would leave you with.
And maybe, I know we didn't, the regulation issue of kind of GDPR in Europe, that could be a separate, I think the question asked about that, but maybe they could pick that up with you in one of the breakout areas as well. So gentleman there, and then the lady at the back will take these 2 questions then.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to switch gears and talk a little bit about digital services. So I find oftentimes in government, we tend to focus on what people need and we don't often pay attention to what they want. I need to eat healthy, but I wanted KFC at lunchtime. So with that in mind, what are we doing to engage Canadians or your residents on what they actually want out of the service? And then the second part of that question is, what are we willing to change? What strategies can we put in place that look at the entire ecosystem that surrounds the service? So a lot of our services are governed by regulations that are in place, by policies that have been put in place that were done in the paper era and that are legacy to today's digital world. What strategies would you put in place to try to re-envision the services that we offer in the digital world without, by changing those things?
So great question. Digital services, are we giving people what they want or what they need? What should we be doing? Actually, we might not have the luxury of giving people what they want. We might just have to give them what they need, but good question. And also that sense of, do we just digitalize existing processes built on the historic legacy, or should we be fundamentally rethinking the whole hinterland as well? Next question there.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Is this on? Can you hear me?
Yes, sort of, yeah.
Oh, goodness. Testing.
Yeah.
I think that's better. Molly Copeland, Employment and Social Development Canada. In most departments, there's policies, procedures in place to manage interactions and relationships with citizens for a variety of reasons. There are some sensitive and fragile relationships in some cases. However, these policies create barriers for us in reaching out directly to citizens from the onset to co-develop these solutions with them. And so my question, what levers or channels have you all made available to your teams to support them in getting that face time with citizens, especially for those hard to reach or vulnerable citizens? Thank you.
Thank you, great question. So how can we directly go to citizens and co-develop kind of new policies, new ways of delivering services with citizens, working around maybe some existing barriers that are in the place? We have 3 minutes left, I'm told, before the end. So you can answer one or both of those questions. Isabel, I'll reverse the order. Isabel, we will come to you first.
Yes.
So which question would you?
So you can ask either
Okay.
the one on digital services, how should they be delivered in the legacy, or on directly going to citizens.
Yeah. So I'll talk about maybe the first one in regards to the legacy. This is creating so much red tape for us right now, these policies. So this is why I do believe the best approach is when you're facing something where you do realize that you cannot go further. Everybody is kind of stuck at some point because the policy does not respond to the need anymore. There is an importance to voice this, speak the truth to the leadership, because I mean, at some point, I don't know how often we speak with each other with this Chief Information Officer community talking about a certain policy that really needs to change. And this is then how we can start to make this happen and gather the right people together in a room and discuss about this is something actually we're going through right now in regards to this hybrid workforce. As an example, the people needs to work remotely. That happened for a period of 2-3 years, but we're still stuck with these security policy that actually were changed in other countries. If we look at Australia, New Zealand, we look at the States, we look at any place, everywhere across the world, these policies have changed, but we haven't changed them yet. So we need to team up and we need to look into this quickly and change these policies to be able actually to remove this red tape. So sometimes maybe you're facing a situation where you're like, okay, I'm facing a problem because of a policy and cannot embrace the digital transformation, but maybe the leaders are already talking about this changing of policy and you can join a working group to make this happen faster. So I think it's very important to speak the truth to leadership.
Thanks as well. Noreen.
I will try to go very quickly. There were a lot of questions there, but what I will say about as a policy shop with the Office of the Federal CIO, one of our superpowers is really knowing where agencies are on their journey. leveraging our digital service teams that are out across the federal enterprise. When they run into a policy or a guidance document, something that's sediment that was established in 1972 and it does not pertain to today's world, we want them to flag that for us. They work with my fantastic colleagues sitting right here in the front row, Andy Lewandowski and Justin Grimes, and our desk officers to bureaucracy hack to develop modern policies that meet today's needs. If the policy doesn't work, the technology won't be successful. I will also say in regard to the needs and wants question, it's human-centered design. It's designing with our customers, not for our customers.
Thanks, Noreen. Mike.
Very quickly, my favorite government digital transformation story was told to me by a senior bureaucrat from Denmark, and it was really simple. They decided they were going to implement services online and create a digital one-window platform for all government services across, by the way, municipal, provincial or state and federal. The first thing they did was they said, we're going to make it so that you can't mail letters to us, and we're not going to mail letters to anybody else. We're only going to communicate online. And they took all the money they saved on stamps, and that funded the digital transformation, right? So I think sometimes you just have to be a little bit pushy on moving the public forward. And I know we have digital divide and some other challenges in Canada. We need to work on those things in parallel. But I do think that government needs to be a little more pushy on digital transformation.
Thanks. Dorothy.
Well, I'll use my very limited time to definitely make a plug for Code for Canada's GRIT service, which stands for Gathering Residents to Improve Technology. It is our inclusive user testing and user research service. So what we do is we have a very diverse pool of people across Canada from diverse communities. They represent a representative sample of different demographics across this country. We also work with a lot of different marginalized and underrepresented communities who often don't have a high level of trust with governments, and we work with grassroots communities to gain feedback from these people who often don't have a voice in the services that are meant for them. We specifically reach out to them and give them a safe space to weigh in on the public services that are designed for them. So if anyone is interested, please come talk to me.
Thank you. Shameless plug there from Dorothy. Paul, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, human-centered design, absolutely. The gentleman asked about, wants versus needs, but I think it also starts with having something to evolve and to innovate. We far too often in government have academic conversations around policy. We should, redo this policy. Look at the GDPR. Look at what we've done in the United States around different things. And that's fantastic. Root it in something that's actually real and show the thing. Like, again, the tell us once question from before, great question. We put together a great PowerPoint. I think there's still a video on Canada.ca to say what tell us once could do. Where's the prototype? Get it wrong. And then work with Canadians and Canadian businesses and those who are looking to come to the country to get it right. But having academic conversations isn't going to move it forward. I mean, those will have to happen. Isabel looked at me when she said, the policies that are getting in the way. That's where I work. But I can tell you that those policy shifts will happen much more at speed when they're faced with a service delivery reality that's in front of them, not a PowerPoint that's somebody's presenting.
Thank you so much, Paul. Before we conclude, and I thank the panel, I've just got a very important announcement to make. The refreshments have been refreshed. So in the exhibition hall, there are more refreshments now. Please do help yourselves. And also after this session, there are 2 sessions left. And at the end of those sessions, there will be a networking reception for everybody just outside, I think by the windows there with the fantastic view. So if you can, please do stay for refreshments then as well and for a bit more networking. But for all of you on this session, thank you so much. I think it's clear that so much can be done if we can join up in those different ways, but there's still quite a lot more to be done. And it's up to all of us in the room to make it happen. Please join me in saying a big thank you to our fantastic panel.